Understanding and serving the needs of your department's clients, whether inside or outside your company, is probably your most important task. In this episode, we will talk about how to build and maintain that vital connection with your clients. Hi, I'm Rick Kendall.
And I'm Fred Ball.
Welcome to Management Mastery. The purpose of these podcasts is to share what each of us has learned about good and bad management in our combined over 40 years of experience, both as managers and executive coaches. During that time, we've coached managers at every level in companies from Fortune 100s to brand new startups in all major businesses, including nonprofits, government, and education. So whether you're just starting in your first management position or are an experienced manager looking to strengthen your management skills, we know our podcast will be valuable to you. If you don't believe you have clients in your job, then you should start looking for a new job. Why? Because if you don't have clients, that means nobody in or outside your company needs what you do. And sooner or later, someone will decide they don't need you. So we all have clients, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
The best client service is where a strong relationship is built and consistently maintained. If you can build a strong relationship, it can work both ways. You serve the client's needs, and they provide you with valuable information and often save you from potential problems. So today what we want to discuss is three things: the importance of understanding your client's needs and how you can best serve them, setting priorities and remaining flexible among multiple clients and across multiple needs.
It's important that we develop an understanding of the client's business and their needs. The first thing you need to be doing is developing an understanding, a clear understanding of your client's business, who their clients are and how they serve them, and how your department helps them to do that. So you want to research how the clients have been serviced in the past, right up to the previous administration of your department. You want to talk to your supervisor, talk to your team members and colleagues who have been involved in servicing the client, and talk to the previous manager of your department if you can, just to find out how the service provided by your department has been received, what the good parts and the bad parts are.
That's interesting, Rick. So few people, they do it, but they don't do it at the level that you just talked about, where you really want to try and get as involved as you can in trying to understand what the client is trying to achieve.
Yeah, and a lot of times the kind of instructions about what you need to do to serve the client will come from your supervisor, and so you're getting it sort of third hand. I had a client where the supervisor had a terrible time understanding what the client actually needed, and my client finally realized that they had to go direct to the source, sort of surreptitiously going around his boss to the client and saying, well, George is telling me this, is that what you really need? And getting this, getting it all straight from the horse's mouth without letting on to his boss that that's what he was doing.
That can clearly be an issue because the supervisor, your boss or your boss's boss, may have been out of the business of servicing the client for a number of years, and they're still thinking back to perhaps a situation when they were in charge.
Oh, absolutely. So, I mean, there are a number of causes for it, but yeah, it's important that you get it as close to the source as you can, without interrupting the normal hierarchy of the organization. Anyway, the first real step here is meeting with your client. And you've got several objectives in that meeting. The first one is to make sure that you've got a clear understanding of what their function is and the needs that your department is going to meet in helping them to successfully do what they're supposed to be doing. And then the second objective is to get honest feedback on how successful or unsuccessful your department has been in meeting those needs. Now, you're going to have a little advantage here because you're going to be new, so you can claim, look, I've got no pride of authorship here. I'm open. I want you to see me as open and objective, and don't hold back. If there's a problem, I want to know about it now and in the future. So, be open and non-defensive.
That honeymoon period can be particularly helpful to you.
Exactly. And it's not going to last for a long time. So you want to use it right away, and don't do anything that gets in the way of that. So even if you know what they're saying is not realistic or, not something you agree with, don't say that initially. Just say, oh, yes, that's interesting. Write it down and say, I'll look into that. And then your third objective in this first meeting with the client is to try to understand from their perspective what your priorities should be in addressing their needs. That is, what are the most pressing, most important needs from their point of view that your department is supposed to be meeting? So you have an idea of what their priorities are. And just an overall admonition, you go into the meeting prepared to listen. Your objective there is to get information from them, not to provide feedback or points of view or whatever, but to listen to what they have to say and ask for their evaluation of where are you doing a good job, your department? Where are you not doing a good job? Probe for details. What could we be doing better? Where did we drop the ball, etc.? Again, you want to not look defensive at all, even though your first instinct may be to say, that's ridiculous. We can't do that. You don't want to do it in the first meeting.
Your instinct may very well be to say, we don't do that. But you're right. You need to listen. And at the end of this meeting, you need to ask for time to think so that you can do some planning.
Right. That's perfectly acceptable to say, these are all reasonable requests and points of view. Let me talk to my staff and get back to you on how we want to go forward and meet your needs.
As we move forward to setting a direction, it's going to be what can your team deliver to the client? And you're going to want to put all of your thoughts together. You're going to want to get your people together, and especially your frontline workers who are the people who are in constant contact with the clients. You want to discuss the information from the meeting that you came back with the client. You want to understand the discrepancies between the needs expressed by the client and your frontline workers. You may very well hear from your frontline workers that what they're asking for is just beyond what anybody can possibly do, or it can be that they tell us that they need A, B, and C, and then don't use A, B, and C if we provide it for them. So you want to gather information from your own people and determine whether the client is satisfied and small changes need to be made, or there are larger changes that need to be made, or there are really significant problems and more significant changes need to be made.
One thing in that regard, Fred, that I've found in my experience a lot is that sometimes we view the world differently depending on where we're standing, if you will. And one of the advantages of being in that honeymoon period we've been talking about is that you are hopefully a more objective observer of the entire situation. And I've found that a lot of times, this is really an issue between, headquarters and the field, if you will. What goes on at headquarters and what goes on out in the quote-unquote real world. And the perspectives can be very different. And it's important for you as the go-between between the client and your department to be able to see the world from the client's point of view and from your department's point of view. Because a lot of times what seem to be unreasonable demands or unmeetable objectives really come down to a misunderstanding and a difference of perspective. And what you need to be doing is merging the two, getting your team to understand, no, this is the reality for the people in the field. It's not the same as ours. I mean, this can all be internal, but people are looking at the world differently based on where they're standing in it, and you need to bridge that gap.
That's true. And there's a couple of more things that you need to discuss with your people. You need to discuss the scope. What can we deal with and what can we not deal with, so that when you go back to meet with the client, you can be prepared to talk with them about that. And what are resource constraints that you will be able to handle or you will not be able to handle? So once you put all those thoughts together, you then need to set your strategy going forward, and that's to establish a game plan with your staff. You want to have clear ends in mind, and there should be somewhere between 1 to 3 clear major goals. An example would be that the client has told you that the personal relationships between their people and your people are not as good as they could be, and so improved relationships would be a clear major goal. Another possibility might be to improve operations if that is an issue, but you can only select a couple of those, and then you need to be prepared to move forward. You want to talk about time frames. These would be the end goals, the 1 to 3. But you need to set short-term interim goals as well, so that when you go back to the client, you will be able to tell the client not we're going to improve relationships, which might take a period of time, but in the short term, in a month or 2 months, we're going to attempt to be doing this and this and this. And you want to set within your own staff weekly or bi-weekly or monthly evaluation meetings to talk about how we're doing in relation to the goals, and that we need to make sure that whatever you're setting is absolutely clear to your staff. And then it will be time to go back to meet with the client.
And I think in doing that, I mean, where we're going now is the process of building and then maintaining this relationship with the client. And I think what's important is that you never take the tone of this is what we can or this is what we will do. But these are the constraints we're operating under, and how should we work together to meet your needs, Mr. or Ms. Client? That's our purpose. That's our reason for being here, is to give you what you need to do your job. So if what they're asking for is something you don't think you can do, then explain why that is, but say, help us figure out what, to set the right priorities so we give you as much as is possible to help you. And, always want to thank them for their input and, show how you've responded to what they've told you initially. And lay out, here's what we're thinking about doing to meet your needs. And be open to them saying, I don't think you quite understood us. We want this, that, and the other thing. So that it's an interactive process. And make it clear to the client that that's how you see it. That you want feedback from them on how you're doing constantly, and that you will hear and respond to that. And you have to remind your team that the client comes first and is always right. There's a famous supermarket in Connecticut where outside the entrance to the supermarket is a big boulder, and carved into the rock it says, store rules, rule number 1, the customer is always right. Rule number 2, when the customer is wrong, see rule number 1. And that should be that should be the operating principle of your department. That, it's their perspective on the world that's the right one when push comes to shove, because they're the ones whose needs you're meeting, and that's your purpose. Sometimes that's hard to do. Sometimes it's hard to swallow. We all have unreasonable clients. And when that happens, the objective there is to find a way, try to negotiate a way to meet everybody's needs as well as possible. Sometimes you're going to have to bring in outside help.
Now, one of the things that I want to always do, when you said I want to be aware to be able to respond to a client need if it comes up, I want a regularly scheduled meeting with the client, because sometimes when we start to do well, the client may not call us. But if we have a regularly scheduled meeting to be able to say, how are we doing? Are there any of your client needs that have changed, and how can we help, is a great way to continue to build the relationship.
Oh, I agree. And it's always appropriate to say, how can I do better? If everything is going right, then we're doing something wrong because we should be doing it better. And I think that's a good way to kind of look at it. Always be looking and talking to your clients about how can we do more for you. And believe me, that gets fed back to senior management. That gets points in your column for doing that and meaning it. So you're being selfish when you do that. Just think of it that way. When I say, how can I do more for you, you're doing more for yourself.
No question. To summarize what we've been talking about today, we've talked about understanding the client's business and their needs going forward. We talked about what can our team deliver, and we've talked about how to build and maintain the relationship.
We hope you have found this podcast useful, and will come back again for more Management Mastery. If you have any comments about this or any of our episodes, or would like to find out more about our other services, including one-on-one coaching and group seminars for managers, visit our website at careercoachclass.com. Thanks for listening.